Did you know that a few weeks after receiving an Oscar nomination for her debut performance, an actress abruptly vanished from Hollywood? At the height of her career, someone who was once heralded as the future of American film was silenced, blacklisted, and denied a job for 12 years, and then she returned in a way that no one could have predicted. It was being able to examine all of the societal issues that were occurring after 12 years of being forbidden from voicing your opinions unless you were penalized for doing so. In addition to performing, she also directed, produced documentaries, won an Oscar, and rose to prominence as one of the most influential and vocal women in the history of the business. Lee Grant is her name. This film will tell the story of her incredible journey from beginning to end, including everything the public was never permitted to witness, the true reason she was erased, the years she spent in quiet, and her stunning return that left Hollywood in shock. Why does her narrative still bother us today, and what actually happened? On October 31st, which is Halloween, Lee Grant was born in Manhattan. The precise year of her birth is still up for question though. 1925 is included in certain records, followed by 1926 or 1927, and perhaps even 1931. Grant did not confirm or deny any particular figure for many years. In Hollywood, sometimes if you want to work you have to stay silent, even about things as seemingly harmless as your age, she once said openly. Leova Haskell Rosenthal was her given name at birth. She came from a Jewish immigrant family, and was the only kid. Her father was the offspring of Polish Jews, and was born in New York. In the early 20th century, her mother and her sister fled anti-Jewish pogroms in Odessa, Russia, where they were born. The family resided in Hamilton Heights, a working-class area where many post-war immigrant families found it difficult to start over. The arts had a significant role in Grant's early years. She first showed her theatrical prowess when she started doing ballet at the Metropolitan Opera when she was 6 years old. Grant did not view the arts as a game, in contrast to many of her contemporaries. She saw it as a means of establishing herself in a cutthroat, competitive environment. She attended a number of prominent New York performing arts schools, including Juilliard, HB Studio, where she studied with UTA Hagen, the Neighborhood Playhouse, where she trained with Sanford Meisner, and eventually the Performers Studio, which is renowned for being the training ground for many of the best stage and movie performers in America. These institutions required discipline, perseverance, and a lifetime dedication to the profession in addition to teaching skill. Lee Grant's upbringing in a family influenced by migration and conflict, along with her intense creative training, gave her a distinct work ethic. She would need to have an unyielding sense of principle, avoid making easy concessions, and avoid following fads as she navigated the challenges that the entertainment business would provide. Following years of rigorous training in the performing arts, Lee Grant made her theatrical debut in 1944 with the Broadway production of Oklahoma. The New York theater scene was a challenging one at the time, and World War II was still going on, particularly for young ladies like Grant, who have immigrant roots. However, she immediately gained recognition for both her abilities and her imposing stage presence, which combined academic discipline with instinct. Grant's 1948 drama Joy to the World left another impression. Despite not being a box office success, her performance received critical and director acclaim, which led to other film possibilities. A single role would drastically alter that course. She played a young woman who was caught for stealing in the theatrical performance of Detective Story in 1949. She was able to display intense internal struggle in a modest but emotionally complicated role, the type of part that many others shunned. Grant not only stepped up to the plate, but she made the supporting role a highlight of the show. Her performance was so strong that the director asked her to return for her first big-screen role in the 1951 Detective Story movie version. Lee Grant became one of Hollywood's most promising young actors as soon as the film was released. She was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Performer because of her portrayal, which is a remarkable accomplishment for a first-time performer. She also took home the Cannes Film Festival's Best Actress prize, one of the most prominent movie theaters in the world. She was hailed by the American press as a fresh, multifaceted talent that deviated from the typical starlet stereotype that dominated the screen. With Grant at the center, the studios started creating blueprints for several projects. Many people thought she was destined to be a prominent member of the next Hollywood actresses. However, everything changed just as it was starting. An unanticipated political upheaval interrupted her career trajectory at the height of her ascent, depriving her of momentum and forcing her to leave the film business completely for more than 10 years. Shortly after the spotlight had finally found her, she had a pivotal moment that would shape the rest of her life. Lee Grant had recently entered the public eye in 1951. She won the Cannes Best Actress Award and was nominated for an Oscar for her debut movie appearance in Detective Story. Hollywood was prepared to accept a new celebrity. However, a speech she gave at a funeral only weeks later brought her career to a virtual standstill. Grant had given a speech at the memorial service for director J. Edward Bromberg, who passed away under months of harassment from the government because of alleged communist affiliations. She said that he died from being hunted, not from disease. Red Channel's A Blacklist of Those Considered Un-American in the Entertainment Sector featured her name after just one phrase. For anybody involved in cinema or television, that was a death sentence in the era of Cold War paranoia and McCarthyism. Although Grant did not belong to the Communist Party, she was previously married to screenwriter Arnold Manoff, who is also being investigated. She was persuaded that all would end if she named her ex-husband when she was called to testify by Hugh Act. She declined. Grant later stated, "I knew the price I would pay and I couldn't do it. A 12-year professional ban was the cost." Lee Grant was prohibited from making any appearances in motion pictures or television shows between 1951 and 1963. Roles were remade, contracts were cancelled, and her name was removed from casting lists as though she had never been there. Studios fell silent, and directors shunned her. Without a trial or a defense, she was expelled from the profession. Without any money, Grant resorted to less regulated but nevertheless unglamorous off-Broadway shows. She took on obscure low-paying parts just to continue performing. She also had to raise her daughter by herself, without the help of agents, without assistance, and without media backing. A SFGate report claims that this time was more than simply a professional penalty. It was a silent, protracted mental struggle. As a little gesture that demonstrated the extreme loneliness and fear she experienced, Grant would visit bookshops and educate herself on politics in an attempt to comprehend what was going on around her. "It's like living in an unseen shadow," she said, always present yet disregarded by her surroundings. However, she persisted. Even when the camera wasn't rolling, she continued to perform, recording each character in a notepad. She used it to remind herself, even if no one was interested in seeing it, she was still an actor. She was remembered by audiences. "Did you stop performing?" others would ask. In actuality, she never gave up. She had to vanish. I agreed with everything she said in her memoir. Grant referred to it as a purposeful gloom. It was not hope that kept her anchored. It was pride, fury, and duty to her daughter. She added, "Every door that slammed shut only strengthened my resolve to not allow anyone else to change my destiny." The anti-communist fervor started to wane by the early 1960s. A few doors opened again. Grant was permitted to go back. However, she was over 40 years old at that time, a time when Hollywood tends to ignore women. She was aware that this would not continue where she had left off. She was prepared for this new beginning on her own terms. Lee Grant made a comeback when Hollywood started to relax its blacklist in the early 1960s. But nobody had high expectations for her. A woman who was almost 40 was previously prohibited from performing. She performed the unimaginable. After embodying everything the business had been taught to avoid, she returned more powerful than before. In the popular television series Peyton Place, Grant returned in 1966 as Stella Chernak. In addition to bringing to light a long-suppressed ability, the part won her her first Emmy Award. A year later, she starred as a distraught wife in the Oscar-winning 1967 movie, In the Heat of the Night, whose eyes were filled with rage and misery despite her silence, became a familiar face on little and large screens after that. The Neon Ceiling, Columbo, Mission, Impossible, and Plaza Suite. Her second Emmy was for Outstanding Lead Actress in The Neon Ceiling in 1971. Lee Grant went from being on the blacklist to winning 2 Emmys in less than 5 years, something that even those who were not on the blacklist seldom accomplished. She became one of Hollywood's most well-known characters in the 1970s. She was nominated for 2 Oscars, Voyage of the Damned 1976 and The Landlord 1970 for Best Supporting Actress. Her 1975 Oscar triumph for Shampoo, however, was the apex. Ironically, she had to struggle once more, this time against men rather than the government, in order to obtain that position. Warren Beatty, her co-star and the film's producer, and Grant had a heated argument during Shampoo's production about the character's depth of feeling. She maintained that a male perspective could not be used to write about or depict the feelings of women. Beatty didn't agree. Grant made a threat to leave the movie. Beatty finally gave in. "You do it as you want. I am an unknown man." In addition to winning her the Academy Award, her performance made a strong feminist statement in the center of Hollywood, where women were still expected to conform to social norms. Hal Ashby, the director, subsequently remarked, "I can't imagine Shampoo without Lee." She extended her impact beyond theater to the horror genre, especially hag horror, which centered on middle-aged women who were suffering from lunacy, loneliness, and terror. She didn't scream or run away in Damien Omen 2, The Spell, or Visiting Hours. Rather, she incited terror with her stance and eyes. She was referred to some critics as a different kind of scream queen, one that was intense, frigid, and difficult to look away from, rather than boisterous or frenetic. Lee Grant transformed the supporting part from an actress who had previously been deleted, transformed herself after redefining femininity on TV. She had 2 Emmys, 1 Oscar, 3 more nominations, and a list of well-received TV and movie roles by the late 1970s. She was no longer mentioned as a victim of the blacklist. They have a new motive for setting her name. One of the most enduring artists in American film is Lee Grant. Lee Grant married scriptwriter Arnold Manoff shortly after she was nominated for her first Oscar. Manoff was a bright, gregarious man with strong ties to the communist arts community. In 1951, when Manoff's name was starting to appear on government watch lists because of his political connections, they got married. At the time, Grant was in her early 20s. She wasn't terrified, but she wasn't a political activist either. She went into the marriage with an attitude of sacrifice, progress, and dedication as a young lady in love with someone she adored. However, the connection quickly showed significant abnormalities. Manoff was hypocritical and a bully. According to Grant, "I lived with a man who treated me with nothing but disdain. He attempted to make her read Engels and Marx. However, she acknowledged that I was unable to comprehend them. None of it meant anything to me." At one point, she discovered a box containing previous letters she had sent to him. He was shocked and died in 1965. They were all happy. "I am unable to learn Marx. I apologize, but I'm unable to." In retrospect, she saw that he had mostly married her to assist in raising the 2 kids from his first marriage. He dominated her and denigrated her. Grant received an invitation to perform a part in an upstate play after the birth of their daughter Dinah. If she took the job, her husband promised to leave. She took it without question. "I knew I had to go. Life was finished. I was completely disliked by him. He was first attracted to me, then everything was over. I worked as a maid." Yes, I was. Dina Manoff, their daughter, was raised by Grant alone following the divorce. For many years, Dina was the focal point of Grant's private life, and the sole lovely offspring of that marriage. During her years on the blacklist, she dedicated all of her time, effort, and residual sanity to raising, teaching, and being there for her daughter. Grant never pushed Dina as she grew up and decided to pursue acting, but she was always there. With every position and every difficulty, their mother-daughter bond became stronger. The 2 appeared together in The Gin Game in 2013, as 2 ladies who had each dealt with very similar scars in different ways, rather than as 2 separate generations. In a previous interview, Lee Grant stated, "My daughter has a voice, but I didn't in my first marriage. And that's a win for me." Few people are aware that Grant was a single mother for more than 10 years prior to becoming a well-known documentary director. She was banished from her own career and had to undergo extended periods of loneliness in order to be true to herself. It was not a catastrophe, it was a redefining process, and the main reason she continued that voyage was Dina. Lee Grant's relationship with Joe Furey was the silent but potent remedy for the wounds from her previous marriage, which persisted for decades and is still going strong now. Joe and Grant first met in the late 1970s. He was a man 12 years her junior, and her career was in full swing. An ex-stage dancer who has switched to producing and writing. "I said yes to everything," she remembered in her memoir. "This child was kind, not smart, not domineering, just loving. It was the best food I had ever eaten." They did so in order to adopt Belinda, a 2-year-old Thai girl, even though she had no intention of getting married again following her divorce. After getting married, they relocated to a large Manhattan flat, a combination of a house and a creative workspace. Joe Furey had just one recurring refrain for Grant, in contrast to her former husband, who preached Marxism and constantly constrained her. "You're capable. Anything." It was more than simply words, either. They co-founded Furey Grant Productions, which makes HBO documentaries. Among their productions were Baghdad, terrifying film on medical treatment during the war in Iraq, and Down and Out in America, which earned Grant the 1986 Oscar for Best Documentary Feature. Joe Furey didn't look for attention. He remained in the background until he aged 70, at which point he started painting seriously. He displayed in prominent galleries in Manhattan within a few years, gaining notoriety for his striking color schemes and daring style. "Not to get fame, but because it's where I feel most alive," Furey once said. According to Lee Grant, "Joey can achieve anything, and he gave me hope that I could too," so she wasn't shocked. Together, these two, one expelled, the other from the edges of the industry, rewrote their third act in a world full of condemnation, stable and incredibly motivating, without being loud or domineering. Nobody predicted that the lady who lost her identity and her job would live. This time, however, Lee Grant lived and loved right. In addition to her 2 formal marriages, Lee Grant had a number of noteworthy romances. She briefly dated actor Warren Beatty in 1974. The two would go on to co-star in Shampoo. She lost her virginity to an Irish dancer called Buster Burnell in August 1943 at the age of 17. According to her memoir, "I said yes to everything." She had dated actor Gene Lyons prior to it. Despite their short lifespan, these connections demonstrated Grant's innate charm in the creative community. She also revealed very private information in her memoir that few others at the time were willing to discuss. She had an abortion early in her career. It was a tough choice, but she said that if I wanted to continue working, she had no other option. Lee Grant was also one of the few musicians who publicly acknowledged having cosmetic surgery. She had a facelift at age 32 as a tactic to reclaim opportunities after being banned, not out of vanity. She referred to it as one of my life's most significant choices, as it allowed me to start over. Following Shampoo's huge success, Lee Grant unexpectedly changed careers and decided to focus on documentary filmmaking instead of acting. It was a turning point in her professional life. She received an invitation from the American Film Institute, or AFI, in 1976 to participate in the Women's Directing Workshop, a pioneering program designed to teach female filmmakers in a still predominantly male film business. With that invitation, a new adventure began. Although Grant began with very little funding and crude equipment, the topics she chose to study had significant societal significance. She concentrated on underrepresented populations and taboo subjects that were frequently ignored by the mainstream media of the day. The purpose of the documentary When Women Kill is to understand the circumstances and reasoning underlying the murders of women, not to defend their acts. Which Sex Am I? An audacious examination of drag queens, transsexual people, and the larger LGBTQ+ community in America in the 1980s. A compelling portrayal of poverty and homelessness in Reagan-era America may be found in Down and Out in America. In 1986, The movie took home the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. Propaganda was never Grant's work. She created films to spark discussion rather than to influence public opinion. By employing the camera as a conduit between her subjects' private narratives and the general audience, she let them speak for themselves. Lee Grant became the first, and to date, the only individual to win an Oscar for both acting and documentary filmmaking with Down and Out in America. It's an uncommon accomplishment that demonstrates the breadth of her artistic talent and her dedication to social causes. To establish herself in the documentary film industry, she didn't require the official title of director. Grant demonstrated that someone expelled from the movie business due to personal convictions could not only come back, but also rise again to speak for those who had been disregarded. The quantity of parts Lee Grant played or the golden statues she gathered are not indicators of her legacy. It is found in the stories she told and the way she did so during a period when no one thought a woman, an actress on the blacklist, could. Lee Grant has never really left the art scene, not even in her 90s. She had an unexpected cameo in a minor part in David Lynch's 2001 film Mulholland Drive, which is now regarded as a modern classic due to its intricate, eerie, and surreal cinematic style. Grant's little appearance made a mark and served as a subdued emblem in Lynch's world of symbols. 20th Century Woman. The documentary films of Lee Grant was a special program presented by the American Film Institute (AFI) in 2020 as a way to honor her. An official acknowledgement of the legacy she established over decades of socially aware filmmaking will be provided by a retrospective showing of her documentaries. That voyage continues by 2024. In recognition of her groundbreaking position as a storyteller, her first 2 directorial works were rescreened at the New York Film Festival. She also participated in a panel discussion with Turner Classic Movies as part of the event, discussing her personal experience and the obstacles she faced in becoming one of the first American women to helm documentaries with strong social and political themes. Lee Grant is 99 years old and still appears in public in 2025. She spoke live after the film with actress Brooke Adams at the Tell Me a Riddle screening at New York's Film Forum on March 17th. She took part in another televised interview with Turner Classic Movies earlier in April, when she talked on the role of women following decades of struggle and the development of film. Even though most people have long since retired, Lee Grant is still active today, not in prominent positions, but as a narrator, a witness, and a living inspiration to generations of female artists who came after her. Lee Grant is more than just a historical observer, director, or actor. She is the epitome of fortitude, creativity, and the unwavering quest for independence. A lady who never lost herself after being expelled from Hollywood. Grant has lived and been reborn several times on a journey that has lasted almost a century, from tiny stages in New York to the Oscar podium, from years spent on the blacklist to becoming a cultural hero. She may seem familiar to those who have experienced bereavement and marginalization, someone who resisted giving in to destiny, an artist who never lacked a voice. Regardless of whether you are familiar with Lee Grant from Valley of the Dolls, Peyton Place, Omen 2, or her uncompromising documentaries on social injustice, she is an essential character who demonstrates that genuine art can endure despite efforts to suppress it. Please feel free to remark if Lee Grant's tale makes you think of someone or perhaps yourself. It only has to be genuine. It doesn't need to be flawless, because occasionally we may recall we're not alone by reading each other's thoughts. We appreciate your patience as you watch this entire video, and we're right here every day, recounting seemingly completed trips if you want to hear more stories like this. However, we're only getting started. Please remember to press the notification bell, like and subscribe, so that you don't miss the next inspiring tale of someone who fell but kept going. You'll be even more shocked by the following video.